Hey everyone, Gill Gross here. Post-match, Rafael Nadal versus Tommy Paul, Paris Masters 2022 second round. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video in 3, 2, 1. Tommy Paul with the biggest win, arguably, of his career. He comes back from down a set to beat Rafa in 3. Final scoreline, 3-6, 7-6, 6-1. Not the most surprising result given Nadal's last couple months. The ab injury at Wimbledon coming back really before it was healed, not looking very good in Cincinnati or at the U.S. Open, despite picking up a couple of victories before running into Frances Tiafoe. And then shortly after that, focusing his attention on his private life at home, where his wife had their first baby. So he hasn't played a lot of matches, and this one was sure to be tough, not only given that, but also his history on indoor hard court, his history at the Paris Masters, although this is the first time he's ever lost before the quarterfinals. And then Tommy Paul. Tommy Paul is a really dangerous top 30 level opponent. So this was not going to be a situation where Rafa was going to be able to play kind of his C level and still get through. Tommy Paul's way too good for that. He has had a really good year, the best of his career, and put together a good performance here. So let's talk about it. I want to go through the match kind of chronologically a little bit. This was looking at a point like a solid Nadal win in his comeback match. He won the first set. He was up a break early on in the second set. And then you'd say the turning point was 2-1 when Nadal had just gotten the break in the second set, and he misses what should have been a pretty easy put-away forehand at the service line, and then misses the first ball on the next 2 points. He was already down love 15. So he's broken at love, and it's a pretty ugly game. And from there, it was a battle. From there, it never felt at any point like Rafa regained a stranglehold on the match. They go to a tiebreak. I think Tommy deserves a ton of credit for how well he played in this breaker. Now, the first mini break that Nadal surrendered was a double fault. But other than that, I don't think Rafa played a really particularly bad tiebreak. He actually served really well, Rafa did, and the only 3 points that Nadal won in this second set tiebreak were actually unreturnables. They were service winners, a couple of service winners, and an ace. Tommy got the better of every single extended exchange, and there were maybe one, maybe 2 unforced errors by Nadal. For the most part, it was actually just Paul taking control and executing really great offense. So he wins that second set tiebreak 7-3. Then we go to the third. Let me fact check that. Oh no, it was actually 6-4. Okay, so let me do a quick correction. Nadal won 4 points in the tiebreak. All 4 of them were unreturned serve because I was forgetting that Rafa hit an ace at 3-6. So Nadal served really great in the tiebreak and still lost it, which tells you something about how well Tommy played. In the third set, Paul got up an early break, and Nadal had a break point to level. It was ad out. He had a forehand in the middle of the court. The score was 2-1 here, and it's the kind of forehand that Rafa has kind of made his career out of never missing. You know, I'm oversimplifying, but it's one of the great things about Rafa is you give him a forehand in the middle of the court that's attackable, and it's just, when he's on, it's just automatic, and he missed it about a millimeter wide. Then at deuce, he goes down the line. This one wasn't quite as easy, but the opening is there. It's the correct shot to play. Another forehand that would have won him the point in all likelihood, and he misses by a millimeter again. So back-to-back points. And then Tommy holds to consolidate the break. Or it wasn't a consolidation, but he goes up 3-1. And after that 3-1, Rafa looked awful physically for the last 3 games of this match, and Paul won it 6-1. I was, reading every article I could about the match just to try to find a quote from Rafa about what happened at the end, and I did not find an explanation. But it was very un-Nadal-like. He again, it looked like something was wrong. It looked like he was sick, or maybe he was, just so exhausted and lightheaded. Anyway, he faded physically, and then I think what happened in the press conference, although I don't know this for a fact, he did have a quote about just, man, I haven't played enough matches, I haven't had enough training, I'm just undercooked right now. So my guess is that someone asked him, hey, Rafa, what happened at the end there? And that was his answer. So he didn't specifically say what he was feeling, but he said, like, yeah, it's a problem. And, it might have just been kind of a fitness thing because, which would surprise me just a tad, but we've all been there where, if you're not in amazing shape sometimes and you're pushing yourself to limits that you weren't pushing yourself to for a long time, it can make you feel pretty sick. So he really kind of went out meekly, but Tommy Paul played very well. And there are some positives for Rafa. I'll get to those at the end. First, let's give Tommy his cake and talk about what he did so well in this match. It was so clear that Brad Stein, Paul's coach, told him, we got to hammer Rafa's forehand corner. You can't go to the forehand of Nadal and not do anything with the ball, right? Or that's definitely not what you want to do. But whenever you have something to hit hard, whenever you have something to attack, go to the forehand. Hit it to that ad side. 70% of Tommy's backhands were cross court, and close to 50% of his forehands were down the line. So you have the majority of Tommy Paul's shots in general going to that Nadal forehand. But if you were to take a segment of his attacking balls, it was really always going to the ad side. The only time he went, to the backhand is, for the sake of a changeup or if the court was open. So it was a heavy bias in Paul's shot selection towards that ad side. And I think the reason for that, or what ended up happening, first of all, is that game plan worked brilliantly because I felt Nadal got pretty exposed in that forehand corner. The defense just wasn't there. He was not defending his forehand very well. The nature, and some of that had to do with how Paul was attacking and the skills that he has. But let's kind of get into first the ball that was coming off of Nadal's racket. So when Nadal was getting attacked into his forehand corner, his defense was generally spinny, topspin, angled, cross court, and short. The depth wasn't really there. So there's a couple things here. First of all, the first 2 things I said, spinny and angled, can actually be a good thing. They can be a good thing if the conditions actually reward the topspin, which in Paris, they don't. The ball doesn't bounce. The second thing, angled, is a good thing usually because righties generally have weaker backhands. So if you hit that angled defense, a lot of the times that's actually one of Nadal's great strengths is from a defensive position. Sometimes even from a desperate position, he can get his opponent to have to hit a backhand, which is usually, from Nadal's perspective, a great thing. Paul's backhand is awesome. That's the problem. It's awesome, especially on this kind of court. He takes it early, he hits it flat, and it goes very, very fast. And he's pretty precise on the cross court. This is the same thing that we talked about in the Tiafoe match at the U.S. Open. Or maybe I didn't talk about it because I was so busy on the radio. Anyway, same pattern. And Paul and Tiafoe, they have very similar backhands. Really good early on the rise because it's very compact, very flat. And they have great cross-court backhands, both of them. Both of them do. And Nadal just wasn't defending his forehand off of those cross-court backhands well and surrendering attackable balls. And on some of those attackable balls, Paul would sometimes do the point-ending damage on his backhand cross-court, or sometimes when he had a chance, an opening, he would change down the line to finish. A lot of the times, though, it would be weak enough off Nadal's racket that Paul would run around and hit forehands. And he also hit his inside-out forehand really, really well, which is another shot that he's able to flatten out over the low part of the net with more court to hit into. And he can really club that inside-out forehand, Tommy. It's actually, I think, his best forehand is his inside-out. Another thing that Tommy did really well, and this all kind of plays into the same theme of Paul's offense being highly successful against Nadal's defense. I felt like whenever Tommy was ahead in the point, he was able to dictate and win it. His volleys were money. And, keep in mind, when I'm talking about Nadal's defense on his forehand breaking down and Rafa giving up short balls, that's going to lead to Paul having chances to approach the net. Those things are connected. And that's what Tommy did. And it kind of reminded me of Stockholm when Tommy picked up his first career title at the end of 2021. The main thing that I was so impressed with about that run was Paul's transition game and his net play. Because I don't think the big hitting from the back of the court actually comes naturally to Tommy Paul. He doesn't have my favorite ground strokes in the world when it just comes to, sustained aggression and his ability to just finish from the back. But when he's moving forward, he is an extremely athletic net rusher, exceptionally athletic, which means he's very good at moving forward to take time away. He's very fluid, hitting, kind of running through the ball and hitting his approach shots, closing the net and reacting to the passing shot. So he covers the net well. He moves up to the net well. And on this occasion, it just felt like every volley he had was just perfect. I mean, the execution at net was crazy. So statistically, what it ended up being for Tommy at net, 24 for 30. That's 80% of his net points won. And 24 points won at the net. You look at total points, he won 99. So he won a fourth of his points at net. So that's what I think Tommy did really well. And those are the main reasons why I think he won the match. Going to Nadal, obviously the negatives, breaking down physically or kind of collapsing physically at the end. And not being able to really defend the forehand, just looking a little bit, a step slow, certainly, in the rallies. And I think, just missing some of the easier shots that he should never miss, just kind of peppered in, sprinkled into this match were some really bad Nadal misses, including, I'd say, the two forehands that I talked about earlier. But I thought there were some positives in this match. This wasn't like a terrible showing from Rafa. The first positive was his second serve return, which he was attacking really well and standing in, which goes against what he has done throughout his entire career. He has not been one to attack the second serve return with a lot of aggression. He has not been one to take his second serve return early. He was doing both of those things. And by the way, just to cover the bases, the reason why I think Rafa never did this throughout his career is because he always backed himself in the rally. So there was no need to take extra risk and miss second serve returns. He would rather just, challenge his opponent, always make the second serve return. And, he didn't mind starting from neutral. But against Tommy here, he really wanted to play offense off of his second serve return. And it was, I've talked about this a couple times this year. There have been a couple matches where I've seen it. This is probably some of the best I've ever seen him do it from an execution standpoint. And to me, it's why he won the first set. Paul won just 3 of 11 second serve points in the first set. And when Tommy was broken in that 3-4 game, he just missed a bunch of first serves, got attacked on a bunch of second serves, and that was it. That was the break. So I think Nadal will look at that and feel really good about his ability to execute that tactic because it doesn't really come naturally to him, but he was able to do it. The second positive, I would say, is serving. And there was certainly a microscope on his serving because of the ab stuff, because he looked not good coming back from the ab injury in Cincinnati in the U.S. Open. So I was watching the serving very closely, and, you know, I wouldn't go as far to say that I am fully convinced that everything is completely fine and Nadal served great in this match. I just can't go that far because I do think that the toss still looked a little bit... I don't want to talk about the toss. I'll say this. The serve, especially the second serve, looked a little bit slicey to me, more than usual. But overall, and by the way, I'm talking about the second serve. The second serve looked a little bit slice-servy, where, and I know, Nadal doesn't have that, regular kick serve usually, but normally it's kind of a combination between a slice and a kick in the way Nadal's second serve spins. But what we saw in New York and Cincinnati is because he didn't, like to stretch out his ab, he didn't want to put his toss over his head. He wanted to put it out to his left. And when you put it out to your left, all you can really do is slice the ball, and it makes his second serve a little bit weaker when he has to do that. So I thought I still saw a little bit of that, but overall, I think the serve was good. He averaged 116 miles per hour on his first serve, 103 miles per hour on his second serve. Those are good numbers. Nadal had 6 aces to 3 double faults. So while I'm not fully convinced that Nadal's serve is, back to 100%, a couple more showings like this one, and I can get there. Which in some ways, bodes well as Rafa heads into the ATP finals. But overall, there's, he will probably go into that event in a compromised position, similar to how he came into this Paris Masters. Let's see if Tommy Paul can build on these results. It was a very well-deserved win for Tommy, who's shown steady improvement. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.